I wasn't supposed to hear that conversation. I was sitting quietly at my desk, staring blankly at spreadsheets on my laptop when my phone rang. My father's name lit up the screen. Dad, a name that once filled me with warmth but lately had become a burden. I answered casually, "Hey, Dad," but there was no immediate response. At first, I thought the call had a poor connection, but then came noises, rustling a chair scraping against the floor, and a deep sigh. Then his voice cut through clearly, harsh and cold. "She's a failure. She'll never succeed." My stomach twisted into a painful knot, and I froze with the phone pressed tightly against my ear. My mother's voice followed, softer but equally painful. "Come on, Daniel. She's doing fine. She pays the mortgage, doesn't she?" My father scoffed bitterly. "That's the least she can do after everything we've done for her. Do you think I'm proud of her? She was a mistake that never should have happened. A constant disappointment, and she thinks she's successful? She'll never be more than a joke." Each word hit me hard, slicing through my heart like tiny blades. My mouth felt dry. My hand tightened around the phone, and I wanted desperately to scream or hang up, but my body refused to respond. My father continued relentlessly, unaware he'd called me by accident, thinking he was talking privately to my mother. "She's lucky we even let her be part of this family. I don't know why she tries so hard. She'll never be one of us," he continued, oblivious to the devastating impact of his words. The call suddenly disconnected, leaving my apartment engulfed in a crushing silence. My heart pounded, so loud it felt as if the walls could shake. For 9 years, I had quietly been paying their mortgage without them realizing it. They believed their monthly payments went directly to the bank, but it was me, through CRH Holdings, an investment firm I founded with guidance from my financial advisor, who had secretly bought their mortgage years ago when they faced foreclosure. They never noticed the fine print, never realized their home was safe solely because of my generosity. Sitting there, numb and shattered, I realized that despite everything I had done, working tirelessly, climbing high in my career, earning more money than my father ever had, it was never enough. It would never be enough. But in that painful moment, clarity emerged. With steady hands, I opened the folder on my laptop, revealing all the documents, the mortgage agreement, payment schedules, and ownership records. My father viewed me as worthless, a failure he could barely tolerate, but soon he would learn exactly who had supported him all these years. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my father's harsh words replaying endlessly in my mind. She was a mistake. It wasn't just an insult. It was the absolute certainty in his tone, as if my existence itself was merely an inconvenience. My entire life, I had desperately chased his approval. Straight A's weren't good enough, career promotions were simply expected, and buying my first home was dismissed as foolish. Yet, through it all, I clung stubbornly to one fragile hope, that if I worked hard enough, he might finally see me as worthy. That hope shattered entirely when I overheard him that night. By morning, I was done being hurt. I was done feeling anything at all. I got up, made myself a cup of strong black coffee, and sat down once again at my desk. Opening the file labeled CRH Holdings, Property 20, I stared at the reality. My parents' home, officially in my hands. Years ago, when foreclosure loomed, my mother had called me in tears, pleading for help while my father remained silent, too proud to ask. I had stepped in quietly and arranged everything, and they believed the payments were still going to the bank. Now, my father was about to discover exactly how dependent he had always been on the daughter he considered a mistake, and in 2 weeks, he would receive the biggest surprise of his life. In reality, every payment they made went directly to my LLC. For 9 long years, I quietly paid thousands every month so my parents could live comfortably. I never asked for gratitude or praise, just basic respect. Now, as I carefully reviewed the mortgage documents on my laptop, my hands remained steady despite the turmoil within me. When I first arranged the mortgage buyout, my financial advisor, John, had insisted we include a purchase option clause. This was a legal safeguard allowing my company, CRH Holdings, to take immediate ownership if my parents missed a single payment. At the time, I had laughed off his concerns, confident nothing would ever go wrong. Now, I wasn't laughing. My parents had no idea about the power I held. They didn't realize their comfortable home, the very roof over their heads, was entirely within my control. Leaning back in my chair, a bitter smile formed on my lips. My father considered me worthless, yet he unknowingly depended entirely on me. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother appeared on the screen. "Hey, sweetheart, can you come over for dinner this Sunday? We'd love to see you." I stared at the text, knowing that previous invitations had always been about money. I thought about ignoring her, but something inside told me to play along. If they could pretend to care about me, I could pretend too. So I texted back, of course, looking forward to it, knowing it was a necessary lie. Before closing my laptop, I needed one last piece of information. My uncle, my father's older brother, had always treated me kindly and fairly, the only person in my family who did. I quickly texted him, "Hey, Uncle Larry, has Dad said anything unusual about me lately?" His reply came instantly, causing my heart to tighten. "Charlotte, we need to talk. I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but it's worse than you think." My phone rang immediately, and I answered it quickly. "Uncle Larry?" He sighed deeply. "Charlotte, I've stayed quiet long enough, but after what I heard last week, I can't anymore." My voice shook slightly as I asked, "What did they say?" He paused briefly before responding, "It's not just gossip. They've been planning something serious. Your father suspects you're hiding money from them. He told your mom that if you don't willingly give them more cash, they'll find ways to force you, possibly by contacting your employer or triggering an IRS audit." Anger surged through me, cold and sharp. My parents weren't just ungrateful. They were willing to ruin my life over money. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself. "Uncle Larry, I need your help. I need proof." "Anything you need, sweetheart," he replied firmly. Over the next 3 days, I prepared meticulously. If my father thought he could play dirty, I would show him exactly how mistaken he was in underestimating me. I called John immediately. "Charlotte," John said warmly, sensing the urgency, "this isn't just a social call, is it?" "Not exactly," I replied, tapping a pen thoughtfully on my desk. "Tell me again how quickly we can act on the house if they miss a payment." Without hesitation, John confirmed, "Immediately. The moment they default, CRH Holdings assumes full ownership." They had no idea who they were dealing with, but soon they would find out. They would have no legal way to fight back unless they somehow managed to come up with $570,000 to buy me out. I smiled slightly, knowing they didn't have that kind of money. They were trapped, and they didn't even know it yet. I exhaled slowly, feeling a satisfying sense of control. "Good," I said firmly to John. "There's one more thing I need you to do. Keep an eye on their account. I suspect they're already struggling, and I need to confirm if their next payment is going to bounce." John chuckled lightly. "That won't take long. Their balance is dangerously low. Unless they magically find $6,200 by the 18th, they're finished." I glanced at my calendar. Only 5 days left. 5 days until my father, the same man who labeled me a failure, realized he'd been living comfortably because of me. 5 days until he would be forced to ask me for help I wasn't planning to offer. On Sunday, I drove to my parents' home as though everything was normal. Seeing the house, the very home I owned, filled me with a strange detachment. It had once been my refuge. Now, it felt more like enemy territory. As I approached, my mother opened the door with exaggerated cheerfulness. "Charlotte, sweetheart, come in," she greeted enthusiastically, her warmth now obviously fake to me. Inside, the house was filled with the aroma of garlic and roasted chicken. My father sat at the table, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. My mother moved around him nervously, setting the dishes perfectly, as though hoping that a flawless meal would soften whatever they were about to ask. My brother Raymond leaned back comfortably, smirking. Raymond had always been the favorite, the golden child who didn't have to work for our father's approval, despite having no real accomplishments. I took my seat, keeping my face calm and unreadable. "Charlotte," my father began, forcing warmth into his voice. "It's good to see you." "You too, Dad," I responded evenly. After an uncomfortable pause, my mother quickly filled the silence. "We've been thinking a lot about family," she said sweetly, reaching across the table to hold my hand, "and how important it is to support each other during tough times." I stayed silent, waiting. My father finally spoke up, trying to sound reluctant as if it was painful for him to ask. "The mortgage payment this month is a little tight," he admitted. "How much do you need?" I asked, acting unaware. My mother hesitated briefly before answering. "We were thinking maybe just an extra $4,300 a month would help us stay afloat." I almost laughed aloud. They didn't realize I was already paying $6,200 each month, and now they wanted another $4,300 on top of that. Setting my fork down slowly, I tilted my head slightly, maintaining my composure. "That's a lot of money. It's nothing compared to everything we've done for you." My father snapped suddenly, unable to hide his irritation. "We raised you, gave you everything. The least you can do is support your family." My blood ran cold at his words. This was the same man who had insulted me, called me a failure, all while living comfortably because of me. Keeping my expression neutral, I simply said, "I'll think about it." My mother sighed in relief. "Oh, sweetheart, thank you. We knew we could count on you." They had no idea that in 4 days, their entire world would fall apart. That night, John called with the news I had expected. They defaulted. A wave of satisfaction washed over me. "They what?" I pretended ignorance. "They missed their mortgage payment," John confirmed. "As of midnight, CRH Holdings officially owns the house." I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. It was finally done. My father, who had spent his life looking down on me, was now officially my tenant. "Do you want to start eviction proceedings?" John asked. "Not yet," I said quietly. I wanted to wait and see how long it would take them to realize the truth. A slight smile crossed my face as I glanced at an old family photo on my desk taken years ago, back when I still believed in their love. When I still believed my father was capable of love. "Not yet," I murmured to John. "Let's see how far they will go before they finally break." Because they would break, and this time, I wouldn't be there to catch them. I didn't have to wait long. 4 days passed, and the silence from my parents was deafening. No calls, no texts, not even their usual manipulative reminders about family sticking together. They hadn't realized yet that their payment hadn't gone through, still living under the illusion that everything was under control. At exactly 9:40 a.m. on Friday, an email notification arrived. Urgent. Default notice. Property number 20 from CRH Holdings Legal Department. My heart raced with anticipation as I clicked it open. The message was formal, direct, and final. Due to missing their mortgage payment by the 18th, property ownership was immediately transferred to CRH Holdings. My parents were now officially month-to-month tenants, at risk of eviction if they failed to comply with rental terms. At 10:05 a.m., my phone rang. It was my mother. I let it go to voicemail. She called again at 10:15, followed by my father at 9:22. I waited an entire hour, letting them sweat, before answering. "Charlotte." My mother's voice was frantic. "There's a mistake with the bank. We got a notice saying we defaulted on the mortgage. You have to help us." "It's not a mistake," I replied calmly. "What?" Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "It's not a mistake," I repeated slowly, clearly. "You didn't pay your mortgage, so the house isn't yours anymore." There was stunned silence before she nervously laughed. "Charlotte, sweetheart, that's impossible. This is our home." "It was your home," I corrected firmly. "The moment you defaulted, ownership transferred to CRH Holdings. Legally, you're now tenants." "That's impossible," my father snapped, panic breaking through his authoritative tone. "We've been paying the bank for years." I paused, letting the tension build. "You weren't paying the bank, Dad. You've been paying me." Dead silence. Then my father hissed, "You're lying." "I'm not," I said calmly. 9 years ago, when you almost lost this house, I bought your mortgage. All these years, you've been sending payments to my company, CRH Holdings, thinking it was the bank. But the truth is, I've owned your house the whole time." My mother gasped. My father muttered angrily, and my brother Raymond suddenly laughed. "So, we've been paying rent to our failure of a sister? Figures you'd mess things up." I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "Since you think I'm such a failure, Raymond, you'll love this next part. Rent is due in 40 days. If you can't pay, you'll be evicted." "Charlotte, wait." My mother started desperately, but my father interrupted her harshly. "This is a bluff. You wouldn't do this to your own family," he accused. I laughed bitterly, thinking about all the years I'd secretly supported them, the thousands of dollars I'd spent to protect them. Wouldn't I? While they belittled me behind my back, I remember my father's cruel words on that accidental phone call. "She's a mistake that should never have happened." I thought about their plan to blackmail me, ruin my career, and take even more money from me. My father always saw me as weak, but he was about to discover how wrong he was. "I've already talked to my lawyer," I said calmly. "If you don't pay your rent, you're out. And if you try anything, threats, manipulation, or even accidental damage, I'll press charges." "You ungrateful little." I hung up before he could finish. Immediately, my phone filled with messages. "Mom. Charlotte, please don't do this. We're family. Let's talk." "Dad. You'll regret this, John, my words." "Raymond. You think you're smart? You're just a bitter, pathetic loser. We'll find a way to take the house back. Just watch." I read each message carefully before blocking their numbers. I had spent my whole life bending over backward for them. Now I was finally done. Leaning back in my chair, I stared out the window, feeling strangely free. For once, they would have to stand on their own. If they fell, it wasn't my problem anymore. The following days were unusually quiet. No desperate pleas, no angry confrontations. Part of me expected my mother to show up at my door, crying and begging for forgiveness. I anticipated my father's rage or my brother's scheming, but nothing came. Their silence was unsettling. I knew they were preparing their next move. 4 days later, on a Wednesday morning at work, my phone rang from an unknown number. I ignored it, but the calls persisted, followed by an email marked urgent, home foreclosure mistake from a law firm. The message explained my parents claimed there had been a misunderstanding about their home's foreclosure and wanted to negotiate. I smirked, forwarding the email to John. John called back, laughing softly. "They don't have a case. They signed every document clearly. Legally, you're completely secure." "They won't stop," I said, thinking of my father's pride and stubbornness. "Probably not," John agreed, "but legally, they're out of options." That evening, my phone rang again, this time Uncle Larry. His voice was serious, urgent. "Charlotte, your father called me. You need to be careful." "What now?" I asked, dread filling my chest. "He's not just fighting legally," Larry warned. "He's trying to hurt you professionally. He told me he's calling your job, attempting to get you fired." A chill ran down my spine. "Are you serious?" He said explicitly that if you won't give them the house willingly, he'll ruin you in other ways. False claims, accusations of fraud, anything to destroy your reputation. Closing my eyes, I took a deep breath. Of course, my father would burn everything rather than admit defeat. But I wasn't going to wait for him to strike first. The next morning, I walked directly into HR. Charlotte, my manager, Sophia, greeted warmly. "What's up?" "We need to talk," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "Privately." She nodded, closing the door behind us. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Sophia, I need to give you a heads up. My father might try to get me fired." Her eyebrows knitted together in concern. "What? Why would he do that?" Slowly, I explained everything, the mortgage, the foreclosure, the threats. When I finished, she sighed deeply and shook her head. "Charlotte, let me be clear. You're not going anywhere." A rush of relief washed over me as she continued. "We deal with situations like this more often than you might think. Family drama, false accusations, grudges. If your father contacts us, we'll document everything carefully. But trust me, he can't threaten your job. I'll also alert our legal team, just in case. If he steps out of line, we'll issue a cease and desist immediately." The tension I'd been carrying lifted from my shoulders. My father had lost his house, and now he'd lost his power over me, too. That night, it finally happened, a hard, urgent knock at my door. I knew exactly who it was before I even opened it. There stood my parents, my father rigid with anger, and my mother's eyes red from crying. "Charlotte," she whispered desperately. "Please." "What do you want?" I asked, arms crossed, voice firm. "We need the house back," my father demanded, his tone harsh and threatening. "You can't do this." "I have every right," I replied calmly. "Legally, financially, and morally." My mother clasped her hands, pleading, "We raised you. We gave you everything. Why punish us like this?" "Punish you?" I snapped, my voice sharp. "For calling me a failure? For saying I was a mistake? For trying to destroy my life when I stopped handing you money?" She flinched visibly. My father's jaw tightened as he glared at me. "You're cruel." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head.
"No, Dad."
I'm finally being fair. A heavy silence filled the air. My father's expression darkened, and he sneered, "You'll regret this, Charlotte. You think you're winning, but you'll always need us. One day you'll see." Something inside me broke free. The final bit of hope that my father could ever change vanished. I looked directly into his eyes, completely calm. "We'll see, won't we?" Without another word, I closed the door firmly. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. As I stood there, gripping the doorknob, heart pounding, it became clear that nothing I ever did would have been enough for them, and finally, I accepted that it didn't need to be. The next morning, I sent the final notice to vacate. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Roberts, due to your failure to meet the mortgage payments, your tenancy is terminated effective immediately. You have 40 days to leave the premises. Failure to comply will result in eviction proceedings. Sincerely, Charlotte Roberts, owner, CRH Holdings." I paused briefly before hitting send. This was it, my final break from them. The backlash began immediately. My mother called relentlessly, my father left an angry voicemail filled with threats, and my brother, Raymond, sent a bitter message blaming me for ruining the family. I ignored them all. 40 days passed. I never checked on them and never offered help. John handled everything, confirming they'd moved out the day before the eviction deadline, likely avoiding the embarrassment of a formal eviction. The house was left messy, but mostly intact, their last spiteful gesture. I drove to the house one final time. Standing in front of the empty, quiet home, the place where I'd grown up, I felt a deep sense of peace. It was finally mine alone. As I stood in the doorway, looking at the empty, abandoned rooms, I felt nothing. No sadness, no guilt, no nostalgia, just a deep sense of relief. I pulled out my phone and called Uncle Larry. "They're gone," I said quietly. He let out a breath. "How do you feel?" I paused for a moment, really thinking about it. Then I smiled. "Lighter," I replied. 3 weeks later, I sold the house. The Jonnet was strong, and it didn't take long. Within days, it was out of my hands. I used the money to create something meaningful, a fund to support young women escaping financially abusive homes. Girls like me who had been raised to believe that just being born meant we owed our families everything.
I knew what it felt like to be trapped.
I knew what it felt like to believe that love had to be earned through sacrifice. But through it all, I learned something powerful. Real family isn't about blood. It's about who truly supports you and who stands beside you when things fall apart. And for me, that real family wasn't them. It was me. 5 months later, a message appeared in my inbox. It was from my mother.
"Charlotte, please.
I don't know where else to go. Can we talk?" I looked at the message for a long time. Not long ago, it would have broken me. I would have questioned everything, wondering if ignoring it made me heartless or cruel.
But now?"
I simply erased it. Some bridges are meant to burn, and I had no interest in turning around.